Following the sad death of Her Majesty the Queen, obviously we were aware that there would be a forthcoming coronation, and we wrote to the palace, offered to make a special coronation cake that we would like to gift to King Charles and Queen Camilla.
First approach that I took to creating a recipe was understanding what was in our fabulous archives, because we've been producing cakes for the royal family for a very long time. I was really lucky to explore some of these recipes, and from exploring the recipes it became very clear that we needed to ultimately create a fruit cake.
One of the key things that we looked at, for example, was in terms of sourcing of the ingredients, that they had to be local, that they had to be sustainable, that what we use is also very little waste, and that is very much taken into consideration in the design and the making of the cake.
Not only did we bake the showstopper cake, we also baked 500 eating portions, and so that took over 2 weeks. There was over 300 free-range eggs cracked for that batter mix of over 300 kilos.
Particular ingredients that we could definitely highlight is the apple eau de vie, and that is grown in Highgrove, and it's actually made out of fermentation of 1,000 different apples, and these represent apples that are grown and preserved for genetic diversity and for longevity of the apple species.
The aging process that we used for the coronation cake was around 2 months. And the general rule of thumb is that the longer that you age the fruit cake, the better the taste, the overall taste will be, as the sugars and the flavours stabilise and mature.
In the Coronation of Kings, our kings would actually sit upon the Stone of Destiny, and now there's a special place under the King Edward, as it is known, chair, or the coronation chair, where the Stone of Destiny is placed.
So the textures on the Stone of Destiny tier have been created by mixing dried fondant in with fresh fondant, and then patching the pieces of fondant together almost like a jigsaw of the various colours. And once the cake was covered, we then used an edible food dust to highlight certain areas, in particular across the edges, the corners, and within any cracks. And that really helped to add depth to the tier and make it look a lot more realistic and stone-like.
One of the most intimate and secret, actually, aspects of the coronation ceremony is when the King and Queen will be anointed with holy oil. The spoon itself and the ampule where the oil is kept for this part of the ceremony, there is a design in the spoon which was carefully extracted and lifted, and that design runs around essentially the second tier of the cake. But it's a kind of very beautiful tier, I think, in terms of how it's been put in the kind of edible gold.
So the round tiers, the detail has been taken from the coronation chair, and the way that that was applied was through a bespoke stencil which we got made, and the stencil was applied to the fondant. We rolled over the stencil slightly so that it raised the pattern to make it look a little bit embossed, and then we applied 24-carat gold leaf to the stencil. And when we obviously then removed the stencil, we were left with the beautiful pattern of all the birds and floral detailing.
We were very keen on having some collaboration which was meaningful to the interests of the royal family and what they have actually sought to encourage. So the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust represents that. We therefore commissioned Nico to come up with designs, and this was based upon the orb which is King Charles will hold. He also took a brief design from the coronation chair, which is a sort of petalled flower motif, and that sort of encircles the cake.
To create the orb for the cake, it was a very lengthy process. For my work I used 3D printing, and the way it works, I fill a cartridge with porcelain, and after designing a file on the computer, basically through layer by layer, so one like little coils of little strings of porcelain, it becomes a full shape.
So I was fortunate enough to take the cake to Windsor Castle. Then we had to reconstruct the cake, so obviously we took it as components and we rebuilt the main show-stopping cake. Actually building the cake in the pastry kitchens was a relatively easy process. It took us approximately about 2 hours.
I'm just very proud to be asked to, create a cake for the coronation. It's like the pinnacle of my career.
Creating the cake for the King's coronation, it's a moment in history, and I know all of my family will be really proud of me when I can finally tell them.
I think it's a great honour for the company in giving and gifting a cake yet again. What was particularly special, I think, for all of us who were involved in this one is that the feedback from the palace is incredibly clear that the King and the Queen were taking personal interest in this. They had seen the initial designs, we talked through some changes. I think it should make the company incredibly proud of its contribution.
I think it's an absolutely magnificent achievement and great teamwork and collaboration by all.